and welcome to the For the Joy Missionary show today. I am so happy to be with you and to be sharing a chat with an incredible fiber artist. I cannot wait to introduce you to her work and her story. Her name is Holly Guertin, and she is a textile and fiber artist, and she's going to share with us about how she has really pursued joy and lives with joy in her work and in her family life. So thank you so much for being here with me today, Holly.
Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
So share with us a little bit about your work. It is so interesting and unique, and I'm so excited for people to see it.
Thanks. So I do a bunch of different things. I am a fiber artist in that I create artwork with felt and wool and create like animals and different kinds of motif on those kinds of pieces of fiber. And then I also create paintings, original artworks for people to hang on their wall. And I also, something that's very exciting, I've been starting to release a line of dresses with my own personal textile designs on them. So
they are so cute. I love them so much. I am waiting to land at a size, pre-baby, post-baby, in between all the babies to invest in a dress that I'm going to wear for the next 20 years because they are so adorable.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm coming out with a new style that's going to be a little bit looser fit.
Nice.
I just had a baby and also want
yeah.
So
there we go. Well, then I might not have to wait. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So share with us about how this whole idea of being a joy missionary has showed up in your work, especially in walking through your training and your early career and things like that.
Well, it's a great question. There are a lot of different, I feel like, sections of my life as a designer and an artist where joy has really come in. In my early career, I worked as a print designer for Lilly Pulitzer, and their colors are super bright and happy and fun. And so it was just a really joyous brand to work with. That brand brings people joy. That's 100% their mission to do. But at the actual job, I just really struggled to fit in correctly for my style to work with their style and to get all of my aesthetics to kind of match into theirs. So it was really difficult for me. And so I ended up actually leaving to start my own business. And that's where I've kind of evolved and become where I am now. And I've been doing that for probably about 7 or 8 years. And literally, I gave my 2 weeks notice, and then I got my first positive pregnancy test. So it was
oh my gosh,
motherhood and art, full-time artist and whatnot. But our first baby was, we love obviously our oldest, and but it was my first time, so it was really challenging and difficult, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to balance work at home and motherhood, and the great thing about it has always been that I can do it with my kids around. And so that's where I never have stopped creating with them around, because it brings me joy, it brings them joy, and it just also, I'm creating pieces that bring others joy.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of this full circle thing that just keeps on giving.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm so interested because so much of your work is so time intensive. It is, hand felted, complicated. We've linked to Holly's portfolio in the show notes or at the caption on YouTube if you're watching. And you'll see just how detailed and how time intensive these things are. And so is that something that you enjoy, the just repetitive? Is that a joyful process for you?
Oh yes, it's very, very therapeutic as well.
Okay.
Needle felting, the process of sculpting the figures on my artwork, it's you take a sharp needle and you poke wool often to create the shape. And so if you're a little angry or a little bit, have some frustration, it's great to get it out on the wool fiber. And so it's always been really joyful for me to do that. But also I've always picked, in art school, even in high school, I would always pick these super long, tedious, difficult processes. It's just a part of who I am. I find a lot of meditation in it. I can it's very contemplative. It's very repetitive. So like my mind can do all sorts of stuff while I'm doing it. And I love to kind of watch things form slowly in front of me. It's fun to see what is created by my hands, but also like outside of myself.
Uh-huh. See, that's one of those things that just really draws my attention to the fact that God just like so uniquely creates people, because I look at so much of your work. I'm like, that is just so gorgeous. I love it so much. And I think I would probably murder someone if I like needed to do that myself, because that would just drive me crazy doing the like really repetitive, but the results are just amazing. Like I just love your work so much, and it's led to some really incredible collaborations for you, correct?
Yes 2019. I feel like 2020 just didn't happen. 2019 I did a collaboration with Anthropology, and that was literally a dream come true. That's my end goal, and I've gotten to do that already. It's a huge blessing.
That's awesome. What did you guys collaborate on?
So we did a fall collection of like a pillow. It was just a pillow. And then we did a holiday collection of an ornament, a Christmas tree, or Christmas tree ornament, a stocking, and an advent calendar.
Mm-hmm.
It was so fun.
Yeah, that is awesome. And so you have your whole career kind of walked in these two worlds, right? You are, Christian woman yourself, but you've also worked primarily professionally in the secular world, correct?
Yes.
So talk to me about, because that is like the number one thing we hear from people, is that I want to be joyful, I want to live with joy, but I'm constantly in these secular environments where there just is a totally different set of, whether it's, norms or rules or expectations or just attitudes. And that is something that people really struggle to balance. So share a little bit about what that's looked like for you.
Yeah. So what I was saying before, when I worked at Lilly Pulitzer, it was an extremely secular environment. And I dealt a lot with, it was a fashion company. So it was a very like stereotypical fashionable company. Everyone's talking about diets and what they're eating and all sorts of things that I just didn't really vibe with. It wasn't really my thing. But in all things, I always knew going into like the corporate world, if you could call it that, I always knew that I was in like a mission. I was in a ministry, because we're all called to be disciples at all times. And so I always have been striving to treat everyone, the way that Jesus tells us to love one another. And that's how they will know that you are mine, is to love one another. And so I just try to love people as best as I can in every single aspect of my life. And so at that time, it was my coworkers that, in a creative environment, you're all just chit-chatting all day long while you're painting or digitizing or editing or doing anything. So I just tried to love them as well as I could, to bond with them at whatever bonding thing that we could share. But then whenever I left that and I became a mom, I was going to, playgrounds and mom groups and all sorts of things, where I was meeting a lot of women who weren't Catholic, weren't Christian, some who were, but I like to meet the people who aren't. And I would use, becoming a mom, all walls are down. You could meet someone on the playground and you're talking about how you gave birth within like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a great way to like start conversations with people and to get really kind of deep right away. We're all talking about our struggles with our kids, and we can just use that as a time to love them and to treat them with dignity and to recognize that they are going through something and I'm going through it as well. So we got to kind of share in that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of your motherhood, you have 4 boys. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you just had one?
Yeah, he's 4 months old now.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So how does art fit into this?
Kind of every now and then.
Yeah.
I find pockets of time throughout the day, especially during nap times, to just do my work. And what I was saying before too, like I can take my artwork with me. Well, the felt artwork, at least I could take it with me anywhere. I could paint outside in our backyard. But I am never shy to do my work in front of the kids. So like a couple years ago when my oldest was about like 3 or 4 years old, I needed to work on a bunch of projects when he was with me during our like quiet time when the other baby was napping. And so he learned how to felt with me, and he would make these tiny little pieces of felt with me while I was doing the wet felt. And then I gave him knitting needles, and he would needle felt, but the real needles are too sharp for him. So he's just graduated to the real needles. But I always have them to do it with me, or if they're not doing it with me, to do something else that they're excited about, but that they can do independently, but they know that I am doing something. And that's always been something important for me to show them that I am working, I'm doing something and people want to buy it. There's value to this work for them to see that firsthand. But even now when I'm painting, I have watercolor set up for the younger two while they're watching me paint. And there's a couple weeks ago, I was making a painting, and our 5-year-old, he walked around the whole house and he made a version of every single one of my paintings that I've ever done. He wanted to do a version of. And that was like such a blessing to me. I can't even tell you that he wanted to do that. And my other son just today said, "Mom, you're the best artist." So like, it's such a huge blessing to me. And I also know that it's a blessing to them to see creativity at work and to kind of unlock their own creativity, and that there's really just no hindrance to it because it's so natural, especially for children, to be creative. And so I just kind of invite them in and let them do it with me.
I love that. I love that so much, because I think that that's something that work from home parents struggle with so much. And it's hard because there's different kinds of work, obviously, 100%. Painting versus answering emails and stuff like that. And that's really always been my philosophy too, is like, there's kind of nothing wrong with them seeing and being a part of it. And I know there's differing philosophies about that. Some people prefer it to be just totally separate, not something that the kids are exposed to, so they don't feel like there's divided attention. But I think that it is something that's almost empowering, or can be empowering, to our kids to really show them that like you can love well and use your purpose and do the thing that you really feel called to do at the same time. And it's not a choice. Like that, it gets set up so often as a false dichotomy. I think of the movie like La La Land. Have you ever seen that?
No, I always want to, but I haven't seen it.
Don't. It made me cry so hard and so sad. I love musical theater. I have a degree in musical theater. And I was like, no, this is so sad, because they set it up really where the two main characters, the main woman primarily, basically they push her to choose her work or this man. And when there's no reason that they would be actually incompatible. And that gets set up that way so often, where like you have to, either prioritize your career or give up everything and have these people that you love in your life.
Right. And it's just not true. I mean, like what you were saying before, there is a difference between painting or felting or doing things like that with some distraction, or versus like answering emails or calculating things, or having web conferences and stuff. But whenever it's possible, I 100% am open to sharing that experience with them. And I definitely think that it could be much more open than it's played out to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that part of what I love about your story so much is I think people have in their head like this image of like what it would be like to be an artist who has a collaboration with anthropology and like does this work that's like featured on Etsy and stuff like that, because it's so like cool and just such a like evocative style. And I think that like your life, the way it actually is something that challenges that narrative so much in just like a really beautiful way.
Yeah. People think that I'm this really like, not hoity-toity, but kind of like high level artist. I'm like, I mean, I was playing in the mud kitchen with my kids this morning. So it's not really the way that it is. And I think that's a lot of like Instagram versus reality, or, perception versus reality. But I think whenever I meet people too in real life, they can see that I just do this. It's just part of who I am. That I was at the chiropractor the other day and with my postpartum appointment, and they're like, so what you doing? Are you working? Are you back to work? And I was like, yeah, I've been back to work for weeks. I can't stop. I don't stop doing this because it's part of who I am. It's like effusive of who I am that I just am creating. I don't know, honestly, what I would do with my time if I didn't create art.
Yeah, I get that feeling. I know that. And I think that's really awesome. So if we can switch gears a little bit and talk about your art education and when you were getting the foundation, because you are one of the few people that I know personally. Maybe this is like an incorrect kind of assertion on my part, but so many of our peers are self-taught, whereas you went to school for textiles, correct?
Yes, I did. Yeah. So I went to Savannah College of Art and Design for fibers, which is fibers. It's the same. Yeah.
And so in doing that, tell us about your experience being in like an art-focused secular environment.
So Savannah or SCAD is an incredible school. I went to it thinking I was going to be a fashion designer. And then I went to the fashion design like building, and people have to you have to label your scissors or someone's going to steal your scissors. I mean, it's like so cutthroat. I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
But then I did a open studio at the fibers department. And there are like girls over like spinning yarn and weaving. And it's just like this very communal experience there. And I was like, these are my people. 100%. And so I switched my major right then and there. And I was fibers from, middle of freshman year through graduation. And the way that SCAD is laid out is that foundational studies and, like the math, English, basic drawing, painting, like some graphic design, those are shared within other majors. But your major stuff is only within your major building, which is not on a campus. It's a kind of spread throughout the city. So SCAD was started in the 70s, I think, and they kind of just filled open buildings, open historical buildings in the city of Savannah. So I didn't have a campus feel as much as most people who went to college, just because I spent so much time in this singular fibers building. But still within that building, some were Christian, some were, I don't know if any were Catholic, but a lot were Christian. A lot of my core friends who were Christian were with me in that major, but most of them were not. And so again, in the same way that I was talking before, I just remember I loved to share with other students what I was working on. And if they were interested in screen printing, I would work with them and try to help as much as possible. And I tried to make it as communal as possible within the building, just to share myself with them. I think I've always kind of viewed myself as a gift. And so I would give myself to them in any way that I could. And so especially within the school, that was showing them how to do things, or if they were going through a problem or a creative funk, I would try to work through it with them. And so I made some good friends there.
That's awesome. That's a refreshing take on the experience, because I feel like I hear a lot of horror stories of people that were just it was just so challenging all the time. And it sounds like maybe that's more the fashion design building.
Possibly. I mean, there were some definitely whoa, I can't be in this room right now because this conversation is not okay. I can't deal with this. So I think sometimes it can be a real shell shock to some people when they get to college and people are having conversations or doing things or pressuring or just addressing stuff that we've never been exposed to. But in high school and through college, I was really involved with a ministry called Young Life. And the mission of Young Life was to reach the farthest out kid, which meant the kid who is the least Christian. We were in the Bible Belt. So the kid who is not, a church goer in any way, shape, or form. So the person who was not within the even like a morally okay kind of lifestyle or worldview didn't scare me at all, just because I've walked with those people for years, and I continue to try to walk with those people as well, because I mean, I don't mean to sound like abrasive here, but those people they're people too. They're children of God, and so I want to love them as authentically as I can, and so to really walk with them where they're at. That I truly believe that's what Jesus would do, and so I want to treat them with the same love and dignity that Jesus would have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know it's really easy to be afraid, like to not know what to do in that situation. And so I've been really thankful for the time that I did have with Young Life, because it did equip me with how to talk to people, where to find those points where we can connect, to really not feel like shell-shocked or stunned by.
Yeah. So is Young Life is more like a peer program then?
Yeah, like a mentorship kind of thing.
Okay.
It's very much like a discipleship model.
Gotcha.
And so in high school, I became a Christian through Young Life. And then in college, I became like a leader, where I was like discipling high school kids while I was in college as a volunteer leader. And funny enough, I was at an all-girls Catholic school, mentoring or like discipling them. And so God has a wonderful sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I converted at the end of my college career.
Wow, how funny. So you did not grow up Christian?
No, not really. I mean, we were like Easter and Christmas people. So like formally Christian, I guess. But it wasn't like a big part of our home. And it wasn't until high school that I really like came in to understand. We went through like, I did confirmation in middle school. We said like some prayers in our family life, but it wasn't until high school that I really like understood who Jesus was, what Jesus did. And it was at a Young Life camp that finally like clicked, and I was able to like start my relationship with him fully.
Wow. Yeah. And so then that led you into kind of the Christian non-denominational church. Is that true? And then you became Catholic at the end of college. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So I should also say that my husband now I was high school sweethearts with him. And so he was raised Catholic, and then his parents were divorced when he was around 8 years old. And then they kind of like stopped, all of that. And so it wasn't until he was in college, when he was looking for a faith kind of activity, that he came back into the church. And so he was actually formally confirmed the same year that I was received back into the church. And so he kind of walked through Catholic faith and answered a lot of questions that I had through college, and through when I was going through those like evangelical churches. We went through, like, me and my friend group went into one non-denominational church that was like at a theater, rock band, steam, like all the stuff. And then we all kind of were like, this doesn't have that much like meat to it, so we're going to look somewhere else. And then a lot of them kind of fell into this one, like very like Calvinist church. And it was not until then that I started to really question some of the tenets of what we were talking about with prayer and predestination and stuff. And I was very thankful for my husband to answer those questions that I had with, what does this mean? I don't understand. And he said, well, that's optional. Like, that's not really quite what the church believes. The church believes this. And that made so much more sense to me. And it was the first time that I actually could ask a question and get an answer as well. That's what I love so much about the Catholic faith, is that we, have 2,000 years of, St. Thomas Aquinas and theology and, real work to answer these tough questions. And it's not, there was so much pressure put on me to understand the Bible well enough to answer these things myself before I was Catholic. I can't do that. I don't have any authority to do that. So I was very, very thankful when I joined the church that this sense of authority and like real truth, that I've just been loving it.
That's awesome. That is so cool. I love people's stories of how they came either back into or into the faith to begin with, because I think it's one of those things, and your story itself demonstrates it, where a lot of times as Catholics, I'm a cradle Catholic, so like in my life, there's kind of that like almost hand wringing in my community, like, how do we like help people want to stay Catholic? How do we help people want to become Catholic? Because there's almost that aspect of like, we've never been without it, to realize all of the things that it does provide that are so grounding and helpful and attractive to people outside of the church.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm very, very thankful to be a convert, because I do very much appreciate it, because I know what life is without it. A couple of weeks ago, we were at a parish, and there was an African priest who had this reverence for the Eucharist that like, I mean, I was brought to tears, and I'm not brought to tears very often, but he raised up Jesus, and he said, "This is Jesus." And he said, "This is like," and he said it like multiple times. And then he said a few other things, but then he said, "And be thankful that you're Catholic Christians, because you get to get this." I was like, I am not one for like impromptu prayers around the Eucharist, but I was like, yes, this is also needed to be said at the time. It was incredible. But it's brought up another like feeling, this gratitude that I am a Catholic Christian, that I get to, and that's the big thing too, and I'll never go back, is because Jesus is in the Eucharist here. He's nowhere else. And that's a gift that, is absolutely incredible.
Well, and then that takes us back to how much gratitude is really necessary to having joy in a given circumstance, because we so often are just kind of flustered and frustrated with things in our lives and anxious, and then are just like, and on top of everything, like, I'm not even joyful, and what is going on? And so often we aren't putting things kind of stacked the correct way to where we are able to sort of unlock that joy when we get through the door of, I'm grateful for what is, even if it is imperfect, not exactly as I would have it, etc.
Without a doubt. I think that one thing I've really kind of latched onto with our Catholic faith is this participation idea. Like St. Paul talks about all the time, that we are we are one with Christ in his cross, and like, let us, I can't remember exactly how he says it, of course, but but he does talk so much about participating in Christ's sacrifice. And so I love to think about that, and this participation that I have every day and what I'm doing is a participation in who he is. And so kind of like tapping into Jesus's and our the Father's creation and his creative abilities, for me to kind of tap into that and to participate in the same kind of creation through my artwork, but also through mothering. It's really just, it enlightens every aspect of my life, and it brings joy in, because it brings Jesus in. And everything, when it's put into the light of Jesus, it's joyful. I mean, you can't help but be joyful when Jesus is around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Holly, for talking with me today. It's been such a joy to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.